people say, well, this is a tech business. This is a financial business. And I said, this is a people business because you can have the best tech. If you don't have the best team, that makes a huge difference. We are fully organized with business units. And I know that business units, it's not a new concept, but we take it to the limit. So if you ask me, who is your CTO? I will answer, we have 16 because you have one CTO for each of those business units. You had several banks, global banks coming to Brazil and basically saying, now we're going to show how things are really done. And, 15 years later, the only one that actually remained is Santander, and basically because they actually acquired a very large Brazilian bank.
Eduardo, welcome to Fintech Leaders, but more importantly, thank you for opening your doors at the heart of PicPay's headquarters in the middle of Sao Paulo. I love the view that we have here. It's one of the iconic views of Sao Paulo.
Wait a little later and see the traffic also.
Yeah, I don't want to be down there, but I like the view. So how's it going today?
Well, first of all, pleasure to have you here with us. And everything is really, really well. We had a perfect 2024 and 25 looks even better. So there's no way we could not be excited.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I've known about PicPay for many years. I'm an investor in fintech, and I cover Brazil, so obviously I've known about it. But when I saw the numbers in preparation for this, I was a little bit blown away, right? Just because of the sheer size. Not many countries can produce a company, that at the top line is about $1 billion, right, of net revenue. So that's important to talk about. But before we go there, let's get a minute or two about you. You've covered everything in financial services in Brazil and globally. How did you land in the role of CEO of PicPay?
PicPay, well, I was CEO of Elo, a payment brand here in Brazil. And a little bit of what you said. She said, I had done the full cycle, right? Issuer, banks, Visa, acquiring companies. So I thought that I would not go for a second circle. So let's move to something that is a little bit more on the edge of the industry, because then it's a good opportunity for me to learn more, as well as new problems, new objectives, new everything.
What's been the biggest change in Brazilian financial services over your career? And this especially for people to understand, because everyone around the world hears about the miracle of digital banking in Brazil.
Yeah.
But take us a little bit through that history.
First of all, if you look at the number of players. So when I began, we had many, many banks. What happened then for almost 15 years was a real concentration. So we got from a place where we had many different banks to a place where in the end you had, real solid banks, I'd say 6 or 7 in Brazil. Wow. And now we are on a different path. So now you have many additional banks. So this is a cycle, right? So many banks, concentration, now you have several. And that's not only about banks. If you look at, let's say, the acquiring business in Brazil, at first you had one acquirer per bank, and then Visa and MasterCard actually got all of those banks together in 2 different companies. So a real concentration. And then a few years later, the central bank came and said, no exclusivity agreements. So the market reopened, and now you have several acquiring companies as well. So I think that this is a real change. The other thing is that I think that the central bank has played a real important role. And obviously, when they look at the system and they see a lot of concentration, they must act. Because you need to pulverize the risk, as well as you need to foster competition. And if you look at what the central bank has been doing in the last, I'd say, 25 years, I mean, you have to admire that, because it takes a lot of persistency and also guts, because, and this is through different types of governments. So the right,
how
the
has
left, and the central bank, because they're such a technical and it's an entity that has its own policies, and they've been fostering more competition. Yeah. If it was not for the central bank, I think that you wouldn't see as many digital banks in Brazil, and not only digital banks, but the whole industry has changed a lot.
Help us understand the scale of PicPay today.
All right. So end of 24, right? Those are the public numbers. So we reached 60 million customers on the consumer side of the business. Out of those, we have 40 million that are active. And by active, I mean, well, they have some deposits with us, or cards, or transactions, PIX transactions, real-time payment transactions. So it's that's a mix of many different products. That's how we measure them active.
Now, you are growing, for your scale at a pretty impressive pace. I want to kind of talk a little bit about your past life and how are you connecting it to today. Right. So in the past, before Elo, you spent some time at Cielo. Back when Cielo was really thriving, right? And, since those days, Cielo is not what it used to be, right? It was delisted last year. You obviously want to avoid that kind of path for any company, right? So how are you bringing those lessons? What happened there? And kind of what is the energy that you're applying to PicPay?
I think that it's always easier if you are on the challenger side, right? When I say easier, it's much harder, because then you're going against the incumbent. So it's harder, but it's easier to not make the mistakes, because when you're incumbent, you're always trying to balance what you need to do and the short-term results. So it's much easier when you're challenging. And then if you look at Cielo, wow, it was very hard, because, everybody knew there that you had new entrants going with a different pricing and a different flexibility. At the same time, it's very, very hard to cannibalize on your own business to protect the future.
Yeah.
So I think that this is a real mistake. And not only about Cielo, but if you look at the whole industry, I think that there is one thing that it kills companies, and it's you cannot have arrogance, right? You need to be humble. Otherwise, you always, you don't take enough, let's say, you don't worry enough if you think that you are okay.
Only
right?
the paranoid survive.
Yeah, definitely. Paranoids are the ones that are actually ready to take on the fight, and to actually see the fight when it's before it's actually there, right? So I think this is fundamental, and something that I think I've learned throughout my career also is that, this is a business that, most people say, well, this is a tech business. This is a financial business. And I say, this is a people business. Because, you can have the best tech. If you don't have the best team, that makes a huge difference. You can fix everything if you have the right person at the right position. If not, things will not get done. And I think that throughout my career, and something that I value so much here at PicPay, and this is a culture of the whole group, is that in many of the companies that I've worked for, you're always trying to convince the board of directors or the owners that you need to bring more of top talent. And this is a real, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because, I mean, this is, as I said, this is a people business.
Yeah.
And then here, I mean, it's the opposite. If there is something that I can tell you that I have full autonomy, but that I get like asked very, very often is, well, let's talk about the team again. Let's make sure that we have the best in each vital position, which is really great because then it's them actually pushing me to have the best team. It's not like me going there and begging to bring top talent.
Is getting the best team about paying top dollar, or is it about selling them on the vision, or is there something else?
I mean, I think that the vision is the number one thing. Obviously, if you're a challenger, it means that it's riskier for them to come. So you also need to the vision. I think it's the most important thing. But if you don't have the right incentives, because you have to break that the inertia, right? Because if you're talking about bringing the best talent, it's not like they're not doing well where they are.
Yeah.
And so compensation and the right incentives is also important. It doesn't need to be immediate, but I mean, you need to see that there's upside.
Right. Fully aligned. When you got started at PicPay, I believe credit products represented single-digit percentages of revenue. That has changed very much now. I think that's been your top job. It's over 40% now, right? What does that entail to transform the company into, I wouldn't say monoline because you already had a few, but now fully multi-product, a true financial institution?
I think that to explain that, I need to give you a little bit of context on the history of PicPay, right? So PicPay was founded in 2012 with a basic value proposition, which was P2P payments and P2 merchant payments using a QR code. So today, this is called real-time payments, right? But at that time, I mean, it was just a broken journey that basically thought, well, let's try to fix this.
You bridged that.
Yeah. So that was the beginning of the company. So in the end, as you know, Pix, which is the real-time payments infrastructure here in Brazil, we basically were Pix before Pix existed. And then that was true for the first 8 years of the company. And so you could say that it's a monoliner with several different use cases, but still a monoliner, right? So end of 2020, a central bank launches Pix. Was kind of a lot of people said, well, PicPay is going to die. But quite the opposite. We actually looked at Pix as just a new rail for the same product that we had, and we embraced Pix. And as Pix took off and became the number one payment method in Brazil in number of transactions, and we knew how to do that because we've done it for 8 years, it actually got us a disproportional large participation on Pix. If you look at Pix transactions in Brazil, 11% of all Pix transactions either begin or end at a PicPay account. So Pix actually boosted growth. And in parallel, we actually started to expand the product portfolio. And so we started first through a financial services marketplace. Then we started to offer cards, also loans from 6 different banks, but still on a asset-light, fee-based model. So we basically distributed products from different partners. And that was true till the end of 22, when we've decided to actually, for the core products, to book them on our own balance sheet. It was twofold decision. First, for most of those very relevant products, and especially cards, which is a very relational product. I mean, if you don't have the full experience with you, it's just a nightmare, right? Because in the end of the day, it's my client, but I'm using somebody else's products. He's not as worried about what happens as I need to be. So in terms of user experience, we thought that it's vital for us to actually dominate that. And also, you actually tap into a much larger TAM. It's funny that lots of investors, when we made that decision, they would tell us, why are you moving from a asset-light business to a business which is still quite a relevant part of it is asset-light, but into a, let's say, asset-heavy business? And it's basically because if we were thinking about multiples, we probably wouldn't do that. But we're thinking about the future of the company, right? And if we kept the same old business model, I'm pretty sure that we wouldn't be what we are today. And our future would be a much smaller one. And that was not what we wanted, right? Well, we wanted to have a large...
And you've kept a competitive, you've reached a competitive ROE, right? Where is your ROE sitting today as reported?
Around 19%, which is pretty good.
It is extremely good in financial services anywhere in the world. One person I've had on the podcast often is the former CEO of Tinkoff, Oliver Hughes. Great guy, he's a good friend. He always talks about NPV, ROE. I suspect to get to this 19%, you've had to drill that mentality inside the company as well. Maybe do you have a framework around analyzing a potential new product or new line? You know, what's your framework? Is ROE at the heart of it? What kind of thresholds?
It is at the heart of it.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's one of the metrics, right? So first of all, we need to see if we're actually solving a real problem for a clients, because otherwise it could be a great ROE, a great product, but it's not solving for anything.
Yeah.
So I'd say that this is where we start, right? Are we solving a problem? Are we able to actually deliver a better product? What are the key advantages that we can take advantage of from PicPay so that I can actually deliver a better product? And we always test, and in the end of the day, if not at least 50% of the clients respond to, hey, if I took that product away, would you miss it or not? If it's not at least 50%, it doesn't make to the next phase. And so this is kind of a very summarized way of doing products. But at the same time, I need to tell you that if you look at PicPay, we are a two-sided ecosystem because we had consumers on one side and then businesses on the other side. So we serve both of them. And we have a business unit that sits in the middle of those two different segments with a kind of a different mentality. They have two mandates. The first one is to actually monetize those two audiences by offering non-financial products. So if you want to buy gaming credits, if you want to top up your cell phone. We also have a ads platform. So if you want to advertise in-app, so that's the first mandate. The second mandate is to actually drive engagement. So I'm not looking at ROE here directly, but I'm looking at engagement. So we have, for example, what we call a PicPay shop, where we have more than 300 e-tailers connected. So every time that we generate more sales through our app, we get a cashback. If that cashback we push directly to the customer. So I could actually take part of that cashback, but that's not the intention, right? The intention is to drive more engagement. So for that business, we actually drive, let's say, all the benefits, either to the consumer side or on the other hand, also to the business side, so that we actually keep that flying wheel moving.
Would you call yourself a super app?
No. First of all, we don't like that, let's say, that concept, right? I think it might be a real concept in some Asian countries. We haven't seen that in many other places around the globe. So I think that we are mostly a financial platform that goes beyond that, but not in the concept of a super app where, at the end of the day, you can make an appointment in a doctor through us. It's far away from what we actually see as our core.
How many people at the company today?
About 4.5 thousand people, large portion of that in tech. Most of the developments are our own. So,
and how do you keep everyone focused on that single mission?
First of all, I think that our org structure, it's quite peculiar. And if there is something that I can tell you that we are really, really well known for, is product velocity. I think you won't find many companies in Brazil with the same product velocity. And part of that, and I'm also going to address your question, is because we are fully organized with business units. And I know that business units, it's not a new concept, but we take it to the limit. So if you ask me, who is your CTO? I will answer, we have 16. Because you have one CTO for each of those business units. You have one HR officer for each of those business units, one CPO. So in that sense, it's like we give, let's say, full autonomy, but it also brings a ownership advantage, which is very visible, because in the end of the day, none of those business units can come to me in the end of the year and say, I didn't deliver that because I did not get prioritized at the corporate level, because they have, let's say, the full capacity to deliver. Obviously, we allocate capital in the beginning of each year, and actually in a 5-year plan, according to what will drive more impact. But once that's defined, then we actually apply the necessary resources to each one of those. So nobody can actually say that, well, no, I didn't deliver because I didn't have enough resources or because I was not prioritized. So I think the org structure, it brings lots of ownership. As any model, it has advantages, it has some downsides. So it also means that a lot of the senior management time is also consumed by coordinating those different business units. Yeah. Because in the end of the day, the client is one. So if I only gave him ownership and autonomy, obviously that, for the top clients, everyone would actually hammer them constantly, trying to get to their own business goals, right?
They'll get 16 messages in a day.
Yeah, so it means that it requires more, let's say, effort on the management to coordinate that, so that you have, obviously we have only one type of experience, one type of design system, so to get things connected, but more than that is how you actually prioritize those actions with the clients on every touch point.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a little bit like, I believe, the Amazon culture, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a series of smaller teams and groups. They're a larger umbrella. Is most of the talent Brazil-based?
I'd say that very much so.
Yeah. And so one thing I want to talk, there's a lot of topics we're going to talk about, but one that I think is very interesting and relevant this day is your initiatives in this new wave of AI tooling. And we were talking earlier today, you're in the top 10 of the global users for OpenAI. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So obviously the scale of your customer base drives a lot of that.
Sure.
But what are your customers using it? Where are you deploying
Okay.
these tools?
I can tell you that we're using extensively. So it's when I mean extensively, is extensively for consumer facing products, but also for productivity inside, and also for things that, let's say, marketing. Well, we've developed a full campaign, a ad campaign in 15 days with basically only using AI. And we actually show that, right? But looking at the client side, first of all, we decided that, let's dive into this, which means that the whole company is driven to get to a point where we become a reference, right? So that also meant that when most of the companies were kind of worried about how can I use that at customer service, we went to a point where we said, we're going to use it, but we will only roll it out when the customer satisfaction based on NPS is actually above what we have with humans. And so it took us, we started deploying it, but in a smaller scale. When NPS actually was consistently above with humans, then we moved, and today the whole first contact is done through AI and 20 points higher NPS. And obviously that's driving productivity gains as well. The other thing that we launched, we were the first ones, as far as we know globally, for Pix transactions in Brazil. We use what we call the PicPay assistant, which is basically ChatGPT behind that. And you can basically send an audio saying, well, please transfer 10 reais from my account to Miguel's account using my wallet balance. And then ChatGPT will format that transaction. You look at it, and then you just click OK, and then we'll do authentication, biometrics, everything that we need to. And that's also true for if you get a bill, you can take a picture of that bill and you send it, and then we'll send you the formatted transaction. So it really makes life easier. And so we deploy. We have currently more than 60 million of our clients can use that. So it's not like we're doing it in a smaller
Fully rolled
part
out
of the consumer base. It's
impressive. And do you think AI companies, especially the foundational model ones, they must be pretty interested in what's going on in Brazil? I mean, if one of their top 10 clients is here, what has been kind of your perception, especially in this space, working with international companies? What is their opinion about Brazil?
I think that in the end of the day, it's always harder when you're here, right? Because if you look at most of those global companies, when you look at Brazil, it varies from 1 to 4% of their total market. So then it's not as relevant. And then after going through that stage, then you need to prove that you are a large part of that, maybe 4%.
Right.
So it's harder. In the case of ChatGPT, for example, it took us, I'd say, at least 9 months to get some priority.
Wow.
And I think that's fair. It's not, I will do the same on their side. To a point where they basically told us at one stage, they said, well, you need to use a company that sits in the middle because we cannot basically service you directly. Then we said, okay. But it was good because as we were deploying large scale, they told us at one point that, you know what, you guys should actually do it directly because at the end of the day, we were doing much more than all those middle companies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just a burden. And so what I can tell you, it took us more time and it was harder than it should have been. At the same time, once you prove that, you can do this at a very large scale as well as with a very good team. Now we're very well, let's say, we constantly have meetings with them talking about the future and, things that are necessary for us. So now we have some input.
Yeah. You have a seat on the table now.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. And for it's actually a good segue to talk about Brazil as a powerhouse of fintech and tech for outsiders. And I travel all over the world and people are consistently interested in fintech in Brazil because they're impressed, but still not everyone understands it. For outsiders, what should they understand about Brazil, about the opportunity, about the sheer scale of it?
I think that the first thing is to realize that Brazil is a very peculiar market. It's not by chance. For example, when I told you that there was a large concentration in the banking industry in Brazil, and then you had several banks, global banks coming to Brazil and basically saying, now we're going to show how things are really done. And, 15 years later, the only one that actually remained is Santander, and basically because they actually acquired a very large Brazilian bank. So I tell you that because it's a very peculiar market. And so you need to understand the inner things of the market in order to thrive. At the same time, if you look at the population, it's one of the most early adopters population in Brazil. So people are not afraid to try new things.
Why is that?
I don't know, man. I think it's like the culture, right? And also, I think that one thing that is, I think it's quite amazing about Brazil is that since the volatility is always there and very high, people here are used to adapting to new conditions. And that's true for the customers, but even more true for companies. So if you get people that have been through Brazil, for a while, they're going to be top managers because they're used to, all this volatility that you see currently in the U.S.
Right.
This is common ground for us. And
welcome.
Once you've gone through all of those ups and downs constantly, so you kind of we'll get through it and we'll manage it. So I think that's also something very true about Brazil. Volatility is high. At the same time, you see that opportunity is also very high. So if you can navigate through that, then the opportunities are large and just there to grab.
If you can make it in Brazil, you can make it anywhere.
Yeah, I'd say that. Well,
and so
in let's say in free market conditions,
yes,
I'd say that.
And so, does that mean that at some point you would consider expanding beyond Brazil, or is that not in the cards?
I think that at some point we'll do that, but with the same humble approach that we do everything. Because I just told you that I'm pretty sure that Brazil is quite a peculiar market, but I'm pretty sure that's also true when you move to a different country. So, I'm very sure that it's not like getting our product there. It's always a completely different game. If there is an industry that I would say it's like wine, right? It doesn't travel really well. Otherwise you'd have several global enterprises, right? That's not true. That was almost true at a certain point, but even those very large banks like Citibank or they're not, let's say, global entities anymore.
And it's tough. I spent
It's-
5 years at Citi, and you've seen kind of the decline of that global culture is just very tough. Bringing it back to Brazil, I mean, the fact that it's so dynamic also means for you that it's very competitive.
Yeah.
You know, I think the world knows, you know, the top brands here, Nubank probably being the largest one. Where do you fit, you know, when it comes to competing, gaining market share? What's your strategy there?
Okay, I think that, first of all, this is a scale business, right? Yeah. So I think that, yeah, there are many fintechs in Brazil, but a much smaller group that has reached scale. And then an even smaller group that have reached scale and profitability. So we're among those very few ones, right? So it gives us, let's say, comfort about the future. Like, it's not like we're still struggling to show that we can do it, but we're far from where we should be. And it's also very peculiar from PicPay. Let's talk about, let's say, three very large digital infrastructures here, right? Nubank. Their origin is basically credit cards, right? And then you get Mercado Pago, also a large player. The origin is the marketplace, right? E-commerce. If you look at PicPay, we're coming from a different place. We're coming from a digital wallet perspective. And I think that gives us a few interesting things. First of all, when you look at us and say, well, we're building the credit business, or you're building the small and medium businesses business, it's not from scratch. It's always on top of the wallet. This is really a vital thing because look at credit underwriting. If I were to only use market data, I mean, I would not be able to really compete. But then again, I have a massive digital wallet with massive deposit base, massive information on cash in and cash outs. I have currently more than 42 million cards registered on file with us. This is larger than Apple Pay here in Brazil. So it's bill payments. I really believe that we have the best bill payments product in the country. And then if you start using my bill payment feature or product, I also know if you're paying your bills constantly, if you're paying your, let's say, your kid's school through my bill payments, I will know that, well, if you're paying, for example, more than 4,000 reais for your kid's school, that's a really good proxy for income. And we add to that all the open finance stuff that we do. And we actually acquired a company 3 years ago, which used to be called Guia Bolso. The same way that we were Pix before Pix was regulated, they were open banking before it was regulated. So we've acquired a company, and that enabled us to actually build the second largest open finance platform in the country. We have currently more than 11 million of our customers who actually gave us their opt-in so that I can pull their data from all the other institutions. And we take what we call here a open platform approach. We take that into consideration in every aspect. So we are the only ones, for example, offering a open finance experience at the core of our UX. Because in Brazil, currently, a person on average has 5 different banking relationships. So it's not easy to manage 5 different banking accounts, right? So we take the open platform approach into the experience. So whenever you give us the opt-in for those other accounts that you have, you will be able to actually manage all of them at the core of our experience. So you can see the PicPay account, and then you scroll, and then you'll see your Itaú account, your Nubank account. And not only that, you will always see that in the same PicPay standardized view. So you don't need to, when you go from app to app, You need to, well, where is the balance here? Where are the credit cards? So you always set the same standardized view, but that also gives us lots of information for underwriting, as well as to much better target our offerings. Because if I know that, for example, you have an investment with Santander that is yielding X, I can basically tell you, wait, I have a better deal for you here. So we really believe in this open platform approach, and we do that in every aspect that we offer.
That makes a lot of sense. And so when you think of the future of PicPay in Brazil, right? What is it that you still have not quite reached, but you're excited about?
First of all, I think we've reached 60 million clients, but definitely we can grow that. That's a key thing for us. Also, I told you that in 2021 we began a really large product portfolio expansion. We've actually launched at least one product per month since the first quarter of 21. But that also means that most of our products, they're quite, let's say, young still, right? So in that sense, it really excites me that we still can grow a lot of new clients, but the penetration of our own products and the current clients that we have is still very low. So there's no reason for us to believe that we will not grow on cross-selling those products. And basically, I think 2024 is a good proof of that. As you said it yourself, we came from about 80% of the business coming from the digital wallet, and now credit products represent about 40%. That's basically because we've been managing to cross-sell. I think that another very good example, and that's because of something that I think is one of our strengths, which is contextual embedded in the journey selling. We launched our our insurances business unit about 2 years ago. And we were kind of 2 years late if you compare to the other digital players, right? So in 2 years, we now have more than 6 million active policies, which is the largest if you compare to any digital bank. So we're pretty sure that we can distribute products digitally really well. So there's no reason why I should not believe that cross-selling in my current base of customers will happen. And the other one that excites us is the small and medium businesses side. By design, we focused first on the consumer side. And so in terms of, let's say, products, I'd say that we're kind of 2 years behind if you compare the small and medium businesses to our consumer business. But we're really fast on product delivery. So I think that this is going to be a good business. And if you compare, I'd say that for us to reach a point where we have a very competitive product on the consumer side, it was very hard because let's be frank, the incumbent banks, it's not like they are not doing a good job. So, but the bar was really high. It took us more. On the small and medium businesses, I think that the bar in terms of products is much lower. So we're going to get there much faster. And then we can start to actually bring some innovation, some open platform approach into that. So I'd say that it's a less competitive market than it's on the consumer side. And again, we're building that on top of the wallet. So when you look at our customer base, I have 8 million customers on the consumer side of the business that are also small business owners. And they're already doing business with me. So this is my first, let's say, the first approach is let's look at those guys because they already they have a good relationship with us. If I take them a good product, there's no reason why they should not also choose us for their business life, right?
There's a saying in fintech, if you want to know the future of B2B, look at consumer today, right? And that's exactly what you're saying. What do SMBs in Brazil want and need when it comes to financial services? Is it similar to the rest of the world?
It's a few things, right? So I'd say that number one ask is credit, right? So it's really important. So credit is important. Then the other thing is a lot of people tell us, because we've launched our own merchant acquiring, right? A lot of people tell us, well, but why did you enter into this Red Sea? And it's a different perspective, right? It's like if you offer acquiring, then you have all the information as well as the receivables, so I can actually much better do underwriting and offer credit, which is a vital piece of what they need, right? So, and it's always good when you're not protecting anything. So for me, acquiring, it's a enabler for the SMB banking strategy instead of, I'm not building the SMB banking because I have an acquirer. It's the completely is a completely different perspective. So going back to your question, they need credit. They also need to be able to manage all of their suppliers. So it's what they need to pay. Also sales. That's why acquiring is also important, because you need to offer ways of selling, right? So credit, let's say suppliers and clients. Then the third part is being able to separate their consumer life from their business life, which for most of those, it's very hard because it's most of them, they're the one entrepreneur. It's one person, right? And also giving them easy management tools because they don't have time. So it's not like, well, let's bring him the ability to upload and download things so they can manage business. No. If you have the inflows and the outflows and you basically show them, you know what, for your next 30 days, those are the inflows and outflows. This is already a huge upgrade. So you don't need to really sophisticate that. So it's about credit, obviously about managing your bills you have to pay and how to collect what you've sold, and also management. That's sort of the three key elements.
Let me ask you a bit of a fun question as we kind of get to the end. Of all the sponsorships that PicPay could have chosen, you chose to partner with Formula One, F1. Why? And tell us more about that.
I think many reasons. I think that, first of all, if you look at Brazil, we have a very large tradition and many fans, right? So we've had many great drivers, right? Fittipaldi and Nelson Piquet, Ayrton Senna. So, people love Formula One here because of those heroes. And so it's a popular thing in Brazil. Second, for the first time in history, we didn't have any Brazilian drivers in Formula One for 7 years. And Bortoleto is the guy coming now, and so bringing Brazil back to Formula One. Yeah. And that's why we actually sponsor Sauber, right? Because that's where he drives in Formula One. And also, there's lots of connection with our business, right? So it's lots of technology. You need to be agile and fast. Security. So in Formula One, if you look at all the automobile, let's say, championships, it's by far the safest ones. technology. So lots to do with us. And I mean, but in the end of the day, it's also about the passion of Brazilians for that. Having a Brazilian there, it also helps us to, let's say, internationalize our brand, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll see you at the next Grand Prix then.
I will be there actually.
Before we wrap up, tell us a bit about you. How do you stay focused and balanced and productive, right? Because this is a key part of making sure that the company moves forward, is making sure that you are also focused and in balance.
For me, it begins with, I love it, right? So it's, when you really love it, and then it's, I mean, you don't get, it's hard for you not to get excited. So it's not like Monday is so Monday. No, it's not only that. I mean, if you look at, and also the team helps a lot. And so for me, it's about, first of all, it's passion, obviously method. We have a very consistent way of measuring the business and make sure that, everyone is focusing on what they should be. We have a weekly, on Mondays, a weekly business review with all the business units. So it's really objective. At the same time, you could tell me, well, do you need to do that weekly? If you look at only what the numbers are showing, no. But doing it weekly and with everyone together, we ensure that everyone knows what's happening, what's important. And so, talking a little bit about that method, right? And also, I think that there are two things that I think it's really, really good to work for me for PicPay. First of all, I think that we've managed to build a team, and I'm going to say something here that is not politically correct, but where there is no corporate rats, and for two reasons. First, because we take a lot of time and energy choosing when I told you best talent is not only about their skills, but also about their values, right? So we take a lot of time on selecting those. And once we do that, and I'm not going to tell you that we are right 100% of the time, but I'd say that in those past 4 years, it's above 95% of the time. And there are only two types of competent people that came that did not stay with us. One, if the person comes here and tries to change the model. Because the model, I've already told you, we believe in business units with ownership. So if you come here and you always trying to say, well, oh, no, but that's not the best way of doing things. It's not going to, this is a lost battle.
Right. Too late.
And the other ones that didn't actually work were people that were kind of corporate rats that, were always trying to get a new business from that other. And the thing is, we have so much to do that actually, if you take part of what I'm doing, maybe it will actually allow me to do even more or even better, which is not an easy thing to do because it goes against the ego, right? The ego always tells you that the more you get, the more important you are, and the more relevant you are. And that's not really true, right? So I think that also it makes a lot of difference in my life. If I come to the company and I'm not worried with, well, what are the things that are going on that are like, taking the energy from the business, and basically because people are trying to get more power or so it's about getting things done and not more power, right?
Eduardo, thanks for doing this. I mean, I hope people appreciate the scale of what you guys are doing. It's fun to watch as an outsider, and I think there's a lot more to come.
Yeah. I really believe that, I think that company has done really well, but it's just the beginning. I think we have the right team to take it to the even higher level. Real pleasure to be here. That was good.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
The Fintech Leaders podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial or investment advice.